Everything was falling apart before my eyes. He didn't even suspect that I knew about his plans for Friday. My name is Haley. I'm 38 years old, and I'm a senior editor at a major publishing house in Boston. My husband Jason and I had been together for 17 years. To outsiders, we seemed like the perfect couple. A cozy house in the suburbs, stable jobs, annual vacations according to schedule. But this glossy facade had been cracking for a long time. I just didn't want to notice. That evening, Jason was taking a shower. The noise of the water echoed through the bathroom, creating a backdrop for another sound. A quiet notification from his phone, carelessly left on the bedside table. I've never been the type to check my husband's phone. Trust is something I've always cherished. But intuition, that vague instinct you only trust when the pain becomes unbearable, lifted me from the chair. The screen lit up. The notification was shockingly simple. Table for 2 confirmed at Avanti, Friday 7:30 p.m. Window seating, as you requested. She'll love it. I froze. Avanti was one of the most expensive restaurants in Boston. We had once dreamed of going there for our 10th anniversary, but canceled the plans due to his business trip. I had never been there, but now Jason was planning a romantic evening for someone else. I wasn't intending to unlock the phone, but my hand moved faster than my mind. The password remained the same. The date of our wedding, just 4 digits, as simple as my once naive notions of marriage. What I discovered was a completely different world. Messages, photos, notes, entire conversations lasting almost a year with someone named Amanda, a young blonde from the communications department of a legal firm where Jason was a partner. They communicated daily, no, hourly, about the most intimate details, from morning coffee to the dress she wore in the evening. And the photos. Photos from a 2-day business trip to Portland. Amanda in Jason's arms, his smile so bright that I barely recognized the man who once supported me during the financial crisis of 2008. I still remember that feeling, as if all the air had disappeared from the room, replaced by a piercing metallic ring in my ears. I wanted to throw the phone across the room, scream, but I just stood there, white-knuckled, heart pounding wildly. "Have you seen my blue tie?" Jason casually shouted from the bathroom, as if everything was okay, as if he hadn't destroyed our marriage with one table reservation. I put the phone back in exactly the same spot, suppressing the storm inside. "Second drawer," I replied in a flat, cold voice. That night, I lay next to him, turned away, listening to his steady breathing while my body remained tense like a drawn bow. How many times had I convinced myself that his detachment was just work stress? How often did I pretend not to notice how he avoided my gaze, made excuses to come home late, carrying an unfamiliar scent of perfume and suspiciously fresh shirts? Now I knew. Every suspicion, every inner feeling was right, and I was no longer a blind wife. The next morning, I still kissed him goodbye, as always. "Good luck with the Japanese clients today," I said, and Jason nodded, completely unaware that I had already seen his plans for a candlelit dinner with Amanda on Friday night. As soon as the door closed behind him, I picked up the phone and called the HR department of the publishing house. I requested a 3-day leave. I needed time. Not to cry, but to prepare. I had spent 17 years being the perfect wife, but now I was going to become someone else. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at a cup of cold coffee, feeling empty. In less than 12 hours, the world I trusted had been thoroughly destroyed. But instead of falling apart, something else began forming inside me, sharp, calm, and frighteningly clear. I didn't want a scandal. I didn't want to be the woman who breaks dishes and screams in the kitchen, only to face pity and another robotic, "I'm sorry." No, if Jason wanted a special evening with Amanda, he would have one, just not in the way he imagined. I reviewed Jason's email. His calendar was flawless, as if he never expected anyone to find it. 7:30 p.m., Friday, reservation at Avanti. The note clearly stated, window seating, dim lighting, wine pre-ordered. A perfect evening for two people with nothing to hide, except from their spouses. I searched Amanda's name in his firm's employee directory. Amanda Parker, Internal Communications. It took less than 5 minutes to find her social media, then another click. Ryan Parker, Amanda's husband, a lead architect at a major design firm in downtown Boston. He had a warm smile and kind eyes. I didn't know Ryan, but I knew what it felt like to be betrayed. And I thought perhaps he should find out too. Of course, I couldn't just call a stranger and say, "Your wife is secretly seeing my husband." I needed another approach, subtle, plausible, and effective. And, as an editor, I had one special privilege, inviting authors and designers to work on new projects, so I crafted the perfect letter. Formal, concise, and completely professional. Dear Mr. Ryan Parker, my name is Haley Thompson, and I am a senior editor at Boston Books. We are preparing to publish a series of books on modern architecture and have noticed your recent projects in the Harborside Business District. If you are interested, I would like to discuss the possibility of collaborating on an illustrated edition. I have arranged a dinner this Friday at Avanti, 7:30 p.m., to discuss the details. It would be an honor to meet you there. I clicked send. Less than 2 hours later, Ryan replied, "Thank you, Ms. Thompson. I am very interested in this opportunity. Friday, 7:30 p.m. at Avanti works perfectly. Looking forward to our meeting." I reread that line again and again, my heart pounding from a strange mix of nerves and sorrow. He didn't know yet, but he would. Not through anger, but through the clarity of truth. The hardest part was booking the table. I called Avanti directly. "Good evening," the hostess replied. "We have a few tables left for Friday. Any preferences?" "Table for 2 by the window if possible," I replied calmly. "And if there's one available near the reservation under the name Hamilton and Ross, ideally close to them. We are potential partners and would like to be nearby." A half-truth, and it worked. "Certainly, ma'am. I'll seat you close to them. Any special requests for wine or menu?" "Just a good view," I answered with a slight smile, though she couldn't see it. On Friday evening, Ryan and I would be sitting just a few steps away from Jason and Amanda, close enough to see every expression, every movement, close enough to shatter the illusion they had built in the dark. I hung up and froze for a long moment. Everything was ready. No screams, no accusations, just a quiet, devastating reveal, perfectly timed. Jason always thought of me as soft. He was wrong, and Friday night would prove it. I arrived at Avanti 20 minutes early in a teal silk dress that Jason once called too flashy for dinner. My hair was gathered in a soft bun, makeup was subtle, and I wore champagne-colored shoes I had never worn outside their box until today. I dressed not to impress. I dressed for battle. And tonight, the battlefield was a 5-star restaurant, candlelit, with soft violin sounds and shimmering crystal glasses. The waiter escorted me to the reserved table. Perfect spot. From here, I could see the table by the window where Jason and Amanda would sit. They hadn't arrived yet. I sat down and ordered a martini, my chest tightened. No matter how prepared I was, the moment of confrontation still made me gasp. Not with fear, but with the necessity to finally face the truth I had avoided for over a year. "Haley Thompson?" A deep, warm voice called me from behind. I turned around. Ryan Parker stood there, tall, in a dark shirt, with a polite smile. He looked just like in the photos, although his eyes seemed a bit more tired. Maybe from work, or maybe from not knowing what was about to unfold. "I'm very glad you came," I said, standing up to shake his hand. "Thank you for agreeing to meet on such short notice." "The pleasure is mine," he replied, and sat across from me. "The project you proposed really caught my interest." We began with small talk about architecture, publishing, and the importance of visually presenting projects. I listened, nodded, asked questions, but my eyes constantly drifted to the entrance. Then they appeared. Jason was in the gray jacket I gifted him last year on his birthday. Amanda was in a form-fitting red dress, walking confidently as though the whole world revolved around her. When Jason pulled out her chair, they laughed together as if starring in their own romantic movie, far from the real world. I gripped the glass tighter and maintained an even tone, continuing the conversation with Ryan. He was too kind to notice me holding back a storm. I watched as Jason leaned in, poured wine, his hand sliding over Amanda's wrist. She smiled and tilted her head, the candlelight playing on her sparkling earrings. When I turned to pick up a napkin, my eyes met Jason's. He froze. His wine glass almost slipped if not for the waiter, who caught it in time. Amanda followed his gaze and saw me. Before they could react, I turned back to Ryan. "Excuse me for a minute," I said gently. "I need to use the ladies' room." On the way, I planned every step. I didn't want a dramatic slap like in some TV show. I wanted the truth, naked, cold, and undeniable. Just as I emerged from the restroom area, I ran into Amanda. She froze, eyes wide. "You're Haley, right?" Her voice was barely audible. I nodded. "And you're the one holding my husband's hand under the table while your husband sits less than 10 steps away from here." Her face paled, lips trembled. "Please, not here. Why not?" I tilted my head, maintaining an even tone. "Isn't this the perfect place? Candles, wine, soft music. Everything's set up for the perfect performance." "I didn't mean... I don't need excuses. But Ryan deserves to know, doesn't he?" I glanced at my table, where Ryan looked around anxiously. "He deserves to know who his wife is really dining with." Amanda turned as if about to flee, but Jason was already behind her, his face white. "Haley, what are you doing here?" he asked, barely breathing. I looked at him, then called out, "Ryan, could you come over here for a second?" Ryan approached, focused. "What's going on?" I looked him straight in the eye. "Ryan, this is my husband Jason, and I assume you recognize Amanda, your wife." The entire restaurant seemed to freeze at that moment. Amanda covered her mouth as tears welled up in her eyes. Jason backed away. Ryan turned to his wife, pain etched on his face. I turned and walked away, leaving them in chaos. But before leaving, I calmly added, "Oh, and don't worry about the bill. Jason's corporate card seems familiar to her." I exited with my head held high, leaving behind full glasses, unspoken apologies, and 2 unfaithful people drowning in a truth they couldn't escape. When I returned to my table after that brief encounter, Ryan was still standing, looking at Amanda trembling in Jason's arms. They both appeared pale, as if they were torn from a beautiful dream and thrust into a harsh reality. I called the waiter over. "Please," I said softly but firmly, "I need a private room. And if possible, combine our table with Mr. Jason Hamilton's table. It seems we have some clarifications to make." The waiter hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "I'll arrange everything immediately, ma'am." Within 5 minutes, we were escorted to a private room, soft lighting, a table set for 4. I sat first, Ryan next to me. Jason and Amanda sat opposite, stiff like students caught cheating during the final exam. No one spoke. No sound of scraping chairs, no clinking of cutlery, just distant music and heavy breathing mixed in the air. Jason broke the silence. "Haley, I don't even know where to start." "Start from 3 days ago," I said, pouring myself water, "when you received confirmation of the reservation, and I happened to see it on the screen of your phone. That's when I found out." They both froze. Amanda lowered her gaze, and Jason opened his mouth to speak, but I raised my hand. "You don't need a monologue. I've read every message, Jason. Every word, every photo, every secret trip to Portland. Don't try to imagine how it felt, to read all of that. I remember exactly how I felt." "I'm so sorry," Amanda whispered. I turned to Ryan. "He's my husband, and she's your wife. The least we deserve is the truth told to our faces." Ryan sat motionless, eyes fixed on Amanda. "And what do you plan to tell me? That it was a mistake? Or that you were just searching for yourself? Because obviously, you found quite a lot in the arms of another woman's husband." Amanda wept. I never wanted it to go this far. It started as a joke. I felt lost, unappreciated at home. Jason, he listened to me." "I listened too," Ryan said, voice trembling. "I spent entire weekends redesigning your office space. You said you wanted a space that inspires creativity. I believed in that." Jason turned to me, voice shaky. "Haley, I know I've messed up. I destroyed the most valuable thing in my life, but please don't let this be the end." I smiled, not softly. It was the smile of someone who has survived the storm and has nothing to lose. "Jason, the end didn't start tonight. It began the moment you looked at Amanda the way you once looked at me. That's when you decided that wedding vows were just words, not a commitment." He lowered his head. Amanda turned away, tears flowing freely. I took out a hotel key from my purse and placed it on the table. "I'll be staying at the hotel across the street tonight. I've already booked a room. Nothing surprising, Jason. You can go home if you have the courage left. I'll return Monday morning. It will be better if you're not there by then." Jason panicked. "Haley, please don't do this. I'll do anything to fix it." "You can't fix a house rotten at its foundation," I replied. "I used to be the woman who always forgave, but now I understand that sometimes forgiveness is betrayal of oneself." I stood up, adjusted my dress, then turned to Ryan. "I'm truly sorry you had to find out this way." He nodded silently. "Thank you for showing me the truth. It hurts, but I needed it." I looked at the other two one last time. "I wish both of you luck, not because I forgive you, but because everyone pays for their choices sooner or later." I left Avanti without looking back. The sound of my heels resonated sharply on the stone path, slicing through the quiet night air of an upscale neighborhood. In my hand was a small purse with the key to room 1203 in the Moonlight Hotel, a suite with a view of downtown where the lights never go out, even when the heart has already gone dark. When the receptionist greeted me with a professional smile and handed over the key card, I nodded silently. Inside the room, I locked the door, took off my shoes, and approached the large window. Amber lights of the city reflected in the glass, casting my silhouette on the wooden floor. For the first time in many years, I clearly saw myself, without Jason nearby, without shadows hiding the loneliness that had long slept inside me. I sat on the edge of the bed, and then I cried. Not like in the movies, and not with silent tears. It was a surge of anger mixed with pain, raw, sharp, uncontrollable. I cried for 17 years of youth, for nights waiting at the door, for lies wrapped in flowers and wine, for all those times when I thought I was loved, when in fact I was slowly being replaced by someone younger, fresher, more temporary. I don't know how long I sat like that. I only know that when the knock came, I was still clutching the pillow, eyes burning. I approached and looked through the peephole. It was Ryan. I slightly opened the door. He was in a long coat, hair slightly tousled, fatigue clearly imprinted on his face. "Sorry to disturb you," he said quietly. "I didn't know where else to go." I opened the door wider. "Come in." We sat in 2 chairs by the window. Outside, cars continued to pass as if the world hadn't cracked tonight. Ryan was silent for a moment, then sighed. "I still don't understand how you found out everything and managed to sit through dinner so calmly." I laughed softly. I wasn't sitting calmly. I was waiting for the right moment. Some truths, if allowed to be told by someone else, lose their weight. He nodded. "Thank you for not letting me continue living a lie." We talked like 2 strangers sharing one wound. He told me Amanda was the first person who believed in his bold projects, and he thought if anyone understood him, it was her. I told him Jason was the one who put the wedding ring on my finger in the rain, promising never to stray. We were both wrong. "I think I'm going to file for divorce," I said. My voice sounded hollow. Ryan looked at me without surprise. "I don't think I can live with someone who is so good at pretending." I met his eyes. "I'm not angry with Jason anymore, at least not like I used to be. Anger doesn't last forever. But there's one thing I know for sure. I will never allow myself to remain in a relationship that destroys my self-respect day by day." He was silent, then quietly said, "You're stronger than I thought." "No," I answered. "I'm just the last one willing to face the truth." That night, Ryan stayed in a separate room in the same hotel. Before leaving, he looked at me and said, "If you need a friend to get through this, I'm here." I nodded. "Thank you, Ryan. Tonight I think you understood me better than my husband did in over a decade." After he left, I stood watching as his figure disappeared down the long hallway. At that moment, I didn't feel strong, but I felt lighter. As if for the first time in years, I had put down a suitcase full of stones that I had been dragging behind me for so long. Jason could beg. He could promise. He could write hundreds of apologetic letters, but my heart closed to him the moment I saw him look at Amanda, the way he once looked at me. And I didn't need anyone's permission to move on. I would go forward by myself, on the same legs that carried me through every storm. The next morning, I left the Moonlight Hotel when the city was still shrouded in fog. I returned to the house where Jason and I had lived for 17 years, not to hold on to the past, but to dismantle what was left of a marriage that quietly ended long ago. Jason was already waiting in the living room. He sat on the couch, hair ruffled, eyes red, shirt rumpled and half-buttoned. As soon as I entered, he jumped up. "Haley, we need to talk," he said, voice cracked as if he had rehearsed this for hours. I set my purse on the table, calm. "Then speak. I know I messed up. I know I betrayed you, and there's no excuse. But we can get through this. I'll do anything. Counseling, I'll cut all contact with Amanda. I already told her. She's left town." I interrupted him. "A colleague of hers told me Amanda resigned and moved back to Chicago this morning. Apparently, she couldn't handle it once the office found out." He sank onto the couch, hands in hair. "You told everyone?" "Not out of revenge, but because I refuse to live in darkness," I said. "I called your mother, Mark and Jenna, even your college friends, those you always tried to impress. I told them exactly what happened. That you cheated on me for almost a year, hiding it behind fake meetings, camouflaged work emails, and kisses you shared with another woman while I made dinner, waiting for you to come home." Jason shook his head, panic rising in his eyes. "You ruined my reputation. Do you realize what the company will think? What my friends will say?" I laughed bitterly. "You care more about your reputation than our marriage. Then let me remind you, you destroyed it, not me. I just stopped protecting the mask you created." He approached closer, trying to take my hand. "Haley, please don't do this. I love you. Truly." I stepped back. "Jason, love can't survive in the shadow of lies. If you loved me, you wouldn't call another woman baby while continuing to hold me in your arms at night." He collapsed on the floor, shoulders shaking. "She meant nothing. It was a mistake." "No, Jason. It was a series of deliberate choices. You had the chance to stop every time you messaged her, made reservations, walked out with lies on your lips. But you didn't stop. And now I won't stop either." His voice broke. "If you leave, you'll ruin my life." "No," I said, looking him in the eyes. "I'll save mine." The following week was filled with Jason's attempts to win me back. Calls, messages, flowers at work, even a 4-page letter detailing his path to clarity after that dinner. I didn't respond. I had heard enough apologies in my life, and now I wanted silence to speak for me. I hired a lawyer and filed for divorce within 3 weeks. A close friend accidentally saw Jason and Amanda at a cafe in the suburbs. They no longer looked radiant. 2 days later, I received his last message. I tried to move on with her, but nothing remains. She no longer smiles at me, and I don't see you in her eyes. I didn't reply. A few days after that, I noticed he deactivated his social media accounts and temporarily withdrew from the board of directors for personal reasons. A man who once lived for appearances now faced himself without a place to hide. Spring arrived earlier than usual that year. I noticed it one Saturday morning when the sunlight poured through the windows of my new apartment, casting warm stripes on the dark wooden floor. I was making coffee when my phone rang. It was Ryan. "Coffee at morning?" he asked simply. I looked at the clock. 9:30. "Give me 15 minutes, I replied, smiling. Since that night at Avanti, Ryan and I, once strangers, now survivors of the same shipwreck, had kept in touch. At first, daily check-in messages, then regular weekend meetups. No pressure, no expectations, just 2 people who had lost everything slowly learning to navigate the world again. That morning he waited at our usual table, notebook open, 2 lattes already ordered. "I guessed right, didn't I?" He smiled, sliding one towards me. "I'm starting to think you're the only one who remembers what I like," I said, taking a sip. Jason mixed up my coffee order for 17 years. We both laughed, not the painful laugh that used to erupt, but something lighter, more serene. "How are you?" I asked. "Officially finalized the divorce last week," Ryan said, nodding as if confirming it for himself. "Amanda didn't say much, just left a short note. Sorry for making you lose faith in love." I looked at him. "And did you lose it?" He pondered for a moment, then met my eyes. "No, because I'm learning to believe again, from scratch. But this time not in promises, but in small, consistent actions." His answer left me in silence. We didn't need to say more. In this silence, I knew we were walking the same path, even if we hadn't yet given a name to what was growing between us. The following months passed in rare tranquility. I returned to my editorial work, enrolled in a weekend photography course, and lived for the first time without the label someone's wife. Ryan, besides managing his architectural firm, began speaking at my publishing seminars for authors. He never missed a single one, and each time he stood in front, sharing his passion for design and humanity, I felt inspired again and again. One day after a seminar, I invited him to my new apartment, small but filled with greenery and light. We ate pizza on the balcony, watching the city sparkle. "Do you think we're changing?" I asked, pulling a knitted blanket over my knees. "No," he said, turning to me. "I think we're returning to who we truly are." I fell silent. His answer touched my heart in a way I hadn't expected. One early summer evening, while walking along the river after an open-air concert, Ryan suddenly stopped and looked at me intently. "Haley, I'm in no hurry. I don't want to push you into anything you're not ready for, but if one day you want to try again, not another marriage, but simply a relationship built on trust, honesty, and no secrets, I'm ready." I looked at him. In his eyes there was no pressure, only patience and sincerity. I smiled. "I'm not ready to love again the old way, but if it's as you described, starting with friendship, sharing, not hiding, then maybe I've already begun, without even realizing it." Ryan said nothing. He just took my hand gently, without rushing. This hand didn't promise anything grandiose, but it told me, if someone helps write my next chapter, it will be the man standing in front of me. And under soft lights, with the breeze gliding over the water, I knew I was entering something quiet, imperfect, but real. And this time, I wouldn't have to sacrifice my self-respect to maintain love, because the person next to me had also once been broken, and now we were both healing from those very shards. A year after that fateful night at Avanti, I received an invitation to the retirement celebration of our publishing house's editor-in-chief, Martha Benson, my mentor and a person I deeply respected. The event was held at the Riviera Hotel, elegant and serene, just like her. I arrived early in a simple but elegant navy blue dress, wearing my mother's pearl earrings. In my hand, I held a small wrapped package, a rare book she often mentioned. I expected no more than a quiet evening of conversations, laughter, and reunions with old colleagues. But the moment I entered the ballroom, I saw a familiar figure, Jason. He stood by the wine table, slimmer, with gray hair at his temples, still elegant but without the cocky confidence he once wore so easily. When he turned and saw me, we both seemed to freeze for a moment. Jason approached, wineglass in hand. "Haley," he said, voice rougher than I remembered. "I didn't think you'd come." "I didn't think I'd see you here," I replied, maintaining a neutral tone. He weakly smiled. Martha's the last one still talking to me after everything that happened. I nodded. She's one of those who always sees the best in people. Jason watched me for a long moment, as if choosing the right words. Finally, he sighed, lowering his eyes. I need to apologize to you. Truly. Not because you need to hear it, but because I need to say it. I remained silent. After everything exploded, I lost more than I expected, he continued. Not just reputation or business relations, but self-respect. I tried to hold on to Amanda for a while, but it all fell apart faster than what I ruined with you. I looked at him, without anger, without resentment, just with the feeling of speaking to someone who had long left my life. I hope you find peace, I said softly. He nodded slowly. And you? Are you okay? Yes, I said, without hesitation. I'm rebuilding my life on my own terms, and I'm not alone. At that moment, Ryan entered the room. He wore a charcoal gray shirt and a modest jacket. When he saw me, he smiled. That smile I jokingly called the light at the end of the tunnel. Jason followed my gaze and nodded when he understood. He's a good man, Jason said. You deserve a fresh start. I placed a hand on my heart, once broken, now whole. Thank you, I said sincerely. And you too. Just start anew, only when you're ready not to hurt someone else. Jason stepped back, as if giving me space to move forward. That evening, Ryan and I sat together at the celebration. We chatted with friends, took photos, and danced a slow dance under golden lights. No grand declarations, no future written ahead of time, just quiet, honest presence of two people who once fell apart and now were rebuilding, not from scratch but from cracks, healed by time and trust. As we left the party, I held Ryan's hand and gazed at the starry sky. You know, I said softly, there was a time when I thought betrayal was the end. Ryan gently squeezed my hand. And now, I think it was just a pause, a break, so I could turn to a better path. And we moved forward, not looking back, because the past was closed with forgiveness, the present painted with trust, and the future quietly unfolded in every gentle hand I held that night. A year after the storm, I was no longer the woman who sacrificed everything for a husband who betrayed her. Now I am Haley, a 38-year-old senior editor, strong, confident, and free. I didn't just survive the pain. I found a new beginning built on honesty and respect. Betrayal once broke me, but it led me to a better life. I learned to place my self-respect above blind love, and in the end, I chose myself without regrets. Did you like the story? Write your opinion in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next interesting story. See you tomorrow.